The night was quiet, the waves whispering as they kissed the soft sand of the private beach. Moonlight poured gently over the ocean, painting everything in silver. Lanterns flickered along a narrow path leading to a candlelit spot near the water. Soft music played in the background, classical and tender. The only other sound was the rhythm of two hearts, beating faster with every step closer to something unforgettable. Ethan Carter stood under the stars, holding a small velvet box in his hand. He had never been the impulsive type. He was a man of detail, of patience, maybe because of his profession. Being a photographer had taught him how to wait for the perfect moment, the right light, the true expression. But tonight, none of that mattered. Tonight wasn't about perfect shots. It was about perfect love. He turned to look at the woman walking beside him, Layla. Her dark hair moved gently with the breeze, her white dress flowing like water. She wasn't just beautiful. There was something about her that couldn't be captured in a picture, though Ethan had tried. Her presence was like poetry, soft, elusive, filled with meaning. And her eyes held stories he had never heard, stories she never told. They had only known each other for 6 months. He met her at a gallery in the city where his photographs were on display. She stood in front of one image, a lone tree under stormy skies, and stared at it for a full 10 minutes before turning to him and saying, "This picture knows loneliness." That was the first thing she ever said to him. And from that moment on, he was drawn to her like a wave drawn to the shore. Their love was quick, intense, almost unreal. She was never one to open up easily. But Ethan never pushed. He simply loved her gently and honestly. And in return, Layla slowly let herself be known, piece by piece like petals unfolding. Till there were parts of her he had never touched. Shadows she never explained. He had seen the sadness in her eyes sometimes when she thought he wasn't looking. But whenever he asked, she smiled and changed the subject. Tonight, he was ready to make a promise, not just for the good days but for all the unknowns. He was ready to say, "I will love all of you, even the hidden parts." As they reached the soft center of the beach, she gasped. Dozens of white candles surrounded a simple wooden table, and hanging from the trees were photographs, pictures he had taken of her over the past 6 months. There were moments of her laughing, reading on the couch, staring out the window, walking barefoot through the rain. Ethan had captured her in all her quiet beauty. "Ethan," she whispered, stunned. "I know it's not a diamond castle or a hot air balloon," he said, smiling nervously, "but it's ours." She looked at him, and he saw the shimmer in her eyes. He dropped to one knee, and her breath caught. "Layla," he began, his voice soft but steady. "I don't know where you came from or what storm brought you to me, but I know you've changed everything. You taught me what it means to feel deeply, to wait patiently, to hope. I don't want a perfect life. I want this life with you. Will you marry me?" There was a pause. Just a few seconds. But it felt like the world held its breath. Then tears slid down her cheeks as she nodded. "Yes, Ethan. I will." He slipped the ring onto her finger and she didn't stop crying. He stood and she pulled him into a long, trembling embrace. Her heart was pounding against his. But just before their lips met, she whispered in his ear, almost too softly to hear. "Promise me something." "Anything," he replied. "Promise you'll never stop looking for me, no matter what." He pulled back slightly, puzzled. "What do you mean?" But she only smiled. "Just promise." He looked into her eyes, filled with something he couldn't quite name. Fear? Sadness? Love? "I promise," he said, brushing her hair from her face. They kissed under the stars, the waves their music, the night their witness. They stayed on the beach long after the candles burned low. They talked about everything and nothing. They shared secrets, some deep, some silly. She told him she hated thunderstorms. He told her he'd photograph every single one just to show her their beauty. Eventually, they wrapped themselves in a blanket near the fire pit. Layla rested her head on Ethan's chest, her hand over his heart. He felt more alive than he ever had. The world faded away. It was just them. Safe. In love. "I wish this night could last forever," she murmured sleepily. "It can," he whispered, kissing her forehead. "We'll make forever, Layla." She smiled, her eyes closed. "Then promise you'll find me if I'm ever lost." "You'll never be lost," he said. "I've already found you." She didn't respond. Her breathing slowed. She drifted to sleep, warm and calm. And soon so did he. The morning light was gentle as it peeked over the horizon. The ocean was calm. The sky was painted in soft pastels. Ethan stirred first. His arm reached for her instinctively. But the space beside him was empty. He opened his eyes. The blanket was still there. Candles were all burnt out. The footprints in the sand were still fresh. But Layla was gone. He sat up quickly, scanning the beach. "Layla," he called out. No answer. He stood and walked toward the water, thinking maybe she had gone for a swim. But the shoreline was empty. Her sandals were gone. So was her sweater. "Layla," he called again, louder this time. His heart began to race. He searched the entire beach, then the nearby path leading back to the car. Nothing. No sign of her. Panic began to rise in his chest. Maybe she got sick. Maybe something happened. Maybe she... He stopped. Her phone was gone too. So was the ring. The velvet box still lay where he had left it, but the ring was no longer on her finger. He looked around, his thoughts spinning. He tried calling her, but the call didn't even connect. Her number no longer existed. His mind refused to believe what he was seeing. Maybe she just went to get something. Maybe she's playing some kind of surprise game. Maybe. But deep down he knew. Layla had disappeared. Just like that. And all she had left him with was a strange, haunting promise. "Promise you'll never stop looking for me, no matter what." The world felt unreal. Ethan stood alone on the beach, still barefoot, still surrounded by the ashes of the night that should have been the beginning of everything. The blanket where Layla had rested was now cold and empty. Her laugh, her warmth, her presence, it was all gone, as if the wind had simply carried her away. First, he told himself it had to be a mistake. Maybe she had woken up early and gone for a walk. Maybe her phone had died. Maybe she was just nearby, waiting to surprise him again with one of her quiet, beautiful smiles. But minutes turned into hours. He checked his phone, no calls, no messages. He dialed her number again. "This number is not in service," the automated voice replied. He blinked, stunned, and redialed. Same message. He called again. And again. It was like she never existed. Ethan raced to his car, heart pounding, sand still clinging to his skin. He drove straight to her apartment, the one they had spent so many nights in, curled up together on the couch, watching old movies or listening to jazz. When he arrived, the door was slightly open. He pushed it slowly, dread rising in his chest. The apartment was empty. Not messy. Not broken into. Just empty. Her clothes were gone. Her books were missing. Even the small painting she had made for him, a watercolor of two trees leaning toward each other, was gone from the wall. The fridge was unplugged. The windows were locked. No note. No message. No sign of struggle. Everything was simply gone. He sat down on the floor, breathing hard, trying to calm the storm building inside him. He checked every drawer, every closet. Nothing. She had erased herself. By evening, Ethan was at the police station. He explained everything to the officer at the front desk. How they had gotten engaged the night before, how she vanished without a word, how her phone was disconnected, her apartment cleaned out. The officer took notes slowly. Too slowly. "Sir," she said eventually, "how long have you known this woman?" 6 months, Ethan replied. "But I know her." I love her. The officer gave him a look, calm, professional, and clearly doubtful. And when did you last see her? Last night. We fell asleep on the beach together. I woke up and she was gone. Any sign of struggle? No. Did she ever talk about wanting to leave? Start over? No. Never like this. She said yes when I proposed. She was happy. The officer sighed. Look, we'll file a missing person report. But she's an adult, and if she chose to leave on her own, it's not a crime. She didn't just leave, Ethan snapped. She disappeared. Everything's wiped. Her number doesn't work. Her social media accounts are gone. She didn't just leave, she vanished. The officer looked up sharply. Her social media is gone? Yes. Everything. Her Instagram, her Facebook, her LinkedIn, it's all deactivated. The officer typed something quickly into the system. We'll look into it, she said. But I'll be honest, Mr. Carter. This happens. People get cold feet. They run. She didn't run, Ethan said firmly, fists clenched. She told me to find her if she was ever lost. She knew this was coming. The officer paused. Did she have any enemies? Family trouble? Anyone who might want to hurt her? I don't know, Ethan whispered, his voice suddenly hollow. I don't know because she never talked about her past. The officer nodded sympathetically. We'll let you know if we hear anything. That night, Ethan lay on his bed staring at the ceiling. Her face kept replaying in his mind, smiling at him across candlelight, the way her lips trembled when she said yes, the way she whispered, "Promise you'll never stop looking for me." He barely slept. In the morning, he started digging. He went through every photo he had ever taken of her, searching for clues, reflections in mirrors, names on papers, background details. He zoomed in, examined shadows, scanned anything that might matter. He found nothing unusual. He checked their old texts, there were hundreds. But now, when he tried to respond, they showed as undelivered. Her account was gone. He logged into her social media from his laptop, blank pages. All profiles deleted. Comments she'd made on his posts had vanished. Like she was never there. Her email bounced back too. He tried everything he could think of. Then he drove to the art gallery where they first met. The gallery owner, an older woman named Mrs. Jensen, remembered Layla immediately. She had such sad eyes, she said. Beautiful, but distant. Did she ever tell you where she was from? No, Mrs. Jensen said. She came in 3 or 4 times, always stood in front of that photo you took, the lonely tree. Said it reminded her of someone she used to be. Did she leave a name? She signed the guest book once, Mrs. Jensen said, disappearing into the back room. She returned with the small, worn book and flipped through it. There, she said, pointing. Layla's name. In her neat handwriting. But instead of Layla Monroe, it read, L. Avery. Ethan's breath caught. She had lied about her last name. His hands trembled as he took a photo of the page. Now he knew he wasn't chasing a ghost. He was chasing someone who had never told him her real identity. But why? What was she running from? That night, he opened a folder on his laptop and began to collect everything he knew. Photos, videos, texts, locations, times, places she had mentioned, the painting she made, the gallery guest book. He stared at the center of the digital board. A picture of her from a month ago, standing on a bridge at sunset, her eyes closed and the wind in her hair. What are you hiding? He whispered to the screen. Why did you run? And why do I still believe in you? He remembered every time she'd looked over her shoulder, every time she flinched at loud sounds, every time she'd asked him not to tag her in posts. He'd always thought it was just her being private. Now he wasn't so sure. The next few days were a blur. He checked with neighbors at her apartment. One older woman said she saw Layla leaving late at night 2 days before she vanished, carrying a large suitcase. Another said she always seemed on edge, like she was waiting for something or someone. Ethan searched for the name Elle Avery online, but there were too many results and nothing matched her face. He visited a private investigator, but the cost was more than he could afford. Till he asked questions, took notes, followed leads, but each one led to a dead end. No family, no ID, no official records. Even the leasing company had no legal name on file, just a signed paper with initials, LM. It was like she had built her life from shadows. But Ethan didn't give up. He remembered the promise. He had told her he'd look for her no matter what, so he printed out her photos. He asked around the city, at coffee shops, bookstores, the art supply store she loved. Some remembered her vaguely. Most didn't. But one girl at a small bookstore said something strange. She used to come here every Thursday afternoon, the girl said. Bought the same book 3 times, Jane Eyre. When I asked why, she said it helped her disappear. Disappear. The word echoed in Ethan's chest. By the end of the week, he stood again on the same beach where he had proposed, staring out at the endless sea. He had no answers. Just a ring in his pocket. A list of false names, and a broken heart full of questions. But he knew one thing for sure. He wasn't giving up. Ethan had always believed that truth brought peace, that uncovering answers would calm the chaos inside. But the deeper he searched for Layla, the more disturbed he became. Love had once felt like sunlight. Now it felt like wandering through a forest at night, chasing shadows that refused to stay still. It had been 2 weeks since Layla vanished. 2 weeks of unanswered questions, sleepless nights, and long hours hunched over his laptop, searching every corner of the internet. And still, he had almost nothing. Almost. What he did have was a name, Elle Avery. That small clue had led him to an old university archive in upstate New York. It was there, in a yearbook from 10 years ago, that he found her. The photo was in black and white, her hair shorter, her expression cautious but unmistakable. She wasn't listed as Layla Monroe. She was listed as Elena Avery. She had been a literature student, quiet, gifted, with a scholarship funded by an anonymous donor. Ethan read the caption 3 times before pulling out his phone and snapping a photo. So Layla had once been Elena. And she had hidden it all. Why? He zoomed in on the image. That's when he saw it, barely visible beneath the collar of her blouse on the left side of her neck, just under her ear. A faint line. A scar. He remembered how she always wore her hair down. Always leaned that side of her face away from the light when he took pictures. She had hidden the scar, even from him. Something terrible had happened to her. Ethan stared at the photo for a long time, his mind swirling. The woman he loved was someone else entirely. She had a different name, a different past, a hidden scar, and secrets that stretched beyond anything he'd imagined. As he left the library, the clouds outside had grown heavy. A soft drizzle fell over the city as he walked to his car. Just as he reached for the handle, a voice stopped him. "She's not yours to find." He turned. A woman stood a few feet away, her face shadowed by an oversized umbrella. She was older, maybe in her 50s, with sharp eyes and an unreadable expression. "I'm sorry," Ethan said, confused. "You need to stop looking," she said calmly. "For your own good. For hers." "Who are you?" he asked, heart hammering. "That doesn't matter. What matters is that you're digging into something that doesn't want to be found." "You know her," he said, stepping closer. "You know Layla. Or Elena." The woman's lips tightened. "Names are just masks. And she wore many. Why did she leave? Where is she now?" "She left to survive," the woman said. "That's all you need to know." Ethan's fists clenched. "I love her. I proposed to her. She said yes. Then she disappeared. And now you're telling me not to look for her?" The woman stepped forward, lowering her umbrella just enough for Ethan to see her eyes, green, piercing, and sad. "If you love her," she said slowly, "stop digging. Before it's too late." "Too late for what?" But she turned and walked away, disappearing into the misty rain. Ethan stood there, stunned. For a brief moment, he thought about listening, about turning around and walking away from the mystery, about letting her stay gone. But he couldn't. He was in too deep. He had made a promise. He got into the car, soaked and shaken, and drove back to his apartment. That night, he took out every photo he had of Layla, Elena, whatever her real name was, and started a new board on his wall. He pinned the university yearbook photo at the center. Around it, he placed all the clues: photos, receipts, flight stubs, books she'd read, paintings she'd made. He circled the scar. What had caused it? He began searching medical records, hospital incidents, news stories. Nothing matched. But then, by accident, he came across an article from nearly 9 years ago. Local man acquitted in domestic abuse case. Victim refuses to testify. There was no name listed for the woman. No photo. Just a vague description. Dark-haired. Early 20s. Guard neck. Ethan felt the blood drain from his face. Could that have been her? Was that why she changed her name? Erased her past? Hid from everything and everyone? Suddenly, the cryptic things she'd said started to make sense. "I don't like thunderstorms. I used to be someone else. Promise you'll never stop looking for me." He leaned back in his chair, overwhelmed. Layla had been running from someone. From something dark. Something dangerous. And he had no idea how close he was to it. The next morning, Ethan visited the hospital listed in the article. It had been almost a decade, but he hoped someone might remember. He showed the yearbook photo to the nurse at the front desk. "I'm sorry," she said after a long look. "I can't share patient details." "I understand," he said. "But please. She might be in danger. Or someone else might be." The nurse hesitated. Then she glanced around and leaned closer. "She came in one night years ago. Scared. Hurt. Said she fell, but it was obvious she hadn't. We treated her and called the police. But when the officer arrived, she wouldn't say anything. Just kept whispering, 'Don't let him find me.' Do you remember her name?" The nurse shook her head. "She used a fake one, I think. But she had a scar. Same place." Ethan's heart ached. "Did she ever come back?" "No," the nurse said quietly. "She vanished after that night." On the way home, Ethan couldn't stop shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. Someone had hurt her. Badly. And she had spent years hiding from them. Now Ethan was pulling her into the light. Was he making things worse? Or was he finally giving her the safety she never had? When he returned to his apartment, there was a package at the door. No return address. Just his name written in unfamiliar handwriting. He opened it slowly, fingers trembling. Inside was a small notebook. Leather-bound. Worn. Smelled faintly of lavender, her scent. He opened the first page. "To Ethan. If you found this, it means I'm not as invisible as I hoped." His breath caught. It was her handwriting. "I lied to you. Not because I didn't love you. I lied because I loved you more than I ever thought I could. And I was scared. Scared that the past would catch up. Scared that if you knew who I really was, you wouldn't want me. Or worse, that you'd get hurt because of me." He turned the pages. Each one was a letter to him. Stories of a different life. Of pain. Of fear. Of escape. She had changed her name 3 times. Moved across the country twice. Changed phones, apartments, jobs. She never stayed in one place longer than a year. And then, she wrote, "And then I met you. And for the first time, I didn't want to run. I wanted to stay, but I couldn't. Not when I saw the same shadows returning. I heard the voice again. I saw the signs. So I left. Before they could find me. Before you became another name on a list of regrets. Tears ran down Ethan's cheeks. She had loved him, but she had also feared for him. The end of the notebook was a simple line. If you still love me, stop looking. But if you believe in us, follow the tree. He stared at it. Follow the tree. And he knew exactly which one she meant. The lonely tree. The photograph she always loved. The one where they first met. It wasn't just a picture. It was a clue. She had left a trail. Not because she wanted to be found by anyone, but because she wanted to be found by him. Ethan sat in the small cabin's living room, surrounded by the silence Layla had left behind. Her backpack was still there, her sweater draped across the armrest, her scent lingering faintly in the air, lavender and salt water. Felt like she had just stepped out for a walk. And yet she was gone. Again. He picked up the small leather notebook she had left for him. His thumb traced the last line she'd written. If you still love me, stop looking. But if you believe in us, follow the tree. He had followed it. And now he was here. But she wasn't. He sat down and opened the backpack. Inside were a few clothes, an old camera, a worn-out paperback book, and a hidden envelope. His name was written on it in her handwriting. Ethan. With shaking hands, he opened it. Inside was a short letter. No hello. No goodbye. Just the truth. I should have told you the first night we met. But how do you tell someone that the person you once loved nearly destroyed you? That you're not just running from a memory, but from a man who never stops hunting? His name is Damian Cross. To the world, he's a successful businessman. To me, he was once my fiancé. He swept me off my feet, made me feel like a queen. Until the mask slipped. He's part of something darker, organized crime, international deals, violence no one talks about. I saw too much. Tried to leave. He didn't let me. Not until I faked my own death and disappeared. But he's always watching. Always reaching. And when I met you, Ethan, for the first time, I wanted to live. But love makes you visible. If I disappear again, it's to protect you. Don't follow me. Don't fight for me. I don't want your name added to his list. Al. Ethan sat frozen, his eyes burning. Damian Cross. The name sounded like a warning. A storm. A shadow crawling through the edges of Layla's life. So she hadn't left because she didn't love him. She had left because she did. She was protecting him. But it was too late for that. The next morning, he got the first message. It arrived as a plain envelope, slipped under the door of his apartment when he returned from the cabin. No stamp, no name. Just a single sheet of paper inside. Leave her past buried or join her underground. Ethan stared at the words. Cold. Threatening. Real. He felt his skin crawl. Someone had been watching him. Someone knew where he lived. Where he had gone. Who he was searching for. That night, he barely slept. The next day, he received a second message. This time, it came as a voicemail from an untraceable number. We know where you've been, Ethan. Stop playing detective. People who love her don't live long. Click. The message ended. He sat in silence for a long time. Then he got up and opened his laptop. If Damian Cross was real, and Layla's letter made it clear he was, then Ethan needed to know who he was dealing with. A few quick searches revealed a perfectly polished life. Damian Cross, CEO of a logistics empire. Clean-cut. Charitable. Connected. Smiling in photos with politicians, giving speeches about business ethics at conferences. But Ethan knew the truth was always behind the headlines. He dug deeper. First real sign came from a blog post on a hidden forum. a whistleblower. Post claimed that Damien's company was a cover for trafficking weapons, laundering money, and silencing anyone who got too close. No official charges had ever stuck. Every journalist who pursued him either vanished from the story or changed focus. Power, money, fear. Ethan now understood why Layla had run. She had survived a man who could destroy lives without leaving a fingerprint. And now that man knew Ethan's name. The anonymous threats weren't random. They were a warning. But Ethan wasn't afraid of shadows anymore. He was afraid of losing her again. He printed every article, every theory, every image he could find and pinned them to the wall. He marked maps, followed timelines, tracked the last known movements of Damien Cross. The deeper he went, the more he saw the pattern. Quiet settlements, erased records, fear in the faces of former employees. One article stood out. Missing woman found in Spain after faking death to escape abusive fiancé. The name in the article had been changed. The photo blurred. But Ethan knew. It was Layla. She had run far, and he had chased her without knowing it. That same night, Ethan received a third message. This time it came with a photo. It showed him walking into the cabin. Someone had taken it from the woods. Below the photo, one sentence. "Next time we won't just be watching." Ethan stared at the message, a cold fear rising in his chest. This wasn't just a warning anymore. It was a threat. A real one. But something inside him refused to back down. He looked at the photo again and noticed something. In the far background of the shot, barely visible through the trees, a glint of something metal. A camera lens? A reflection? He zoomed in. It was a trail cam. A wildlife camera, motion activated. If it had caught him, maybe it had caught the person watching him too. He grabbed his coat and drove back to the cabin, arriving by dawn. The forest was quiet, mist curling through the trees. He searched the woods carefully, and after an hour, he found it. A small black motion-triggered camera, strapped to a tree facing the clearing. He retrieved the memory card and rushed home. Took time, but he found the footage. Most of it showed wildlife, deer, raccoons, the wind shifting branches. Then, one night, the camera caught something else. A man, dressed in black, standing in the trees, watching the cabin. Tall, broad-shouldered, a cold stillness in his posture. The man never moved closer, never revealed his face. But he stood there for nearly 30 minutes, unmoving, watching. Then he turned and left. Finn felt his stomach twist. He didn't need a face to know who it was. Damien Cross had found her. And he had found Ethan too. That night, Ethan made a decision. He packed a bag and checked into a hotel under a different name. Then he drove to a nearby town and met with someone he never thought he'd speak to again. His friend Jonah, a former hacker who now worked in cybersecurity. "Help me dig into someone dangerous," Ethan said. "I need to know where he is, where she might be. I need to be ready." Jonah gave him a long look. "You sure about this, man? You're going up against a ghost with knives." Ethan's voice was steady. "I don't care. I'm not letting her run alone anymore." Jonah sighed. "All right. Let's get to work." They began tracing Damien's public movements, surveillance gaps, encrypted communications, anything that could help Ethan predict his next move. And while they worked, Ethan clung to the only thing that mattered. Love. Layla had run to protect him. But now it was his turn to protect her. The fog rolled thick across the winding coastal road as Ethan drove north, the salty air clinging to his windshield. It was early morning, and the world around him looked like a dream or a memory he couldn't shake. The sea was somewhere to his left, just beyond the mist. He hadn't slept in almost 30 hours, but he kept going. 'Cause he was close. A tip had come in through an anonymous email. Just 6 words. She was here. Marrow Bay. Gallery. There was no sender. No attachments. No explanation. But the timing was too perfect. The message had arrived just a day after Ethan and Jonah discovered Layla's bank card had been used in a small-town grocery store, under a new name but with a signature that matched her old one. Morro Bay. A quiet, forgotten town perched along the northern coast. Known for its fishing docks, foggy cliffs, and an art gallery that served mostly locals and wandering tourists. It wasn't a place people stumbled into by accident, which meant Layla had chosen it. He parked on the side of a narrow road near the harbor. Wooden boats bobbed gently in the water. Seagulls cried overhead. A few old fishermen smoked near the docks, their eyes tired but kind. No one seemed in a hurry. Time moved slower here. Ethan walked toward the heart of town. The art gallery sat on the corner of a small stone square, weathered blue shutters, big glass windows, and a rusted bell hanging above the door. A hand-painted sign read, "Drift and Tide Gallery." He stood outside for a moment, catching his breath. Then he stepped inside. Soft music played from an old radio. The space smelled of paint and sea air. The gallery was quiet, filled with light and color. Oil paintings hung on the walls, seascapes, faces, abstract storms, lonely beaches. But Ethan didn't look at the art. He looked for her. A woman in her 50s stood behind the counter, glasses low on her nose. She looked up and smiled gently. "Looking for something in particular?" "I'm not sure yet," Ethan replied, voice low. "Just hoping to find something that feels familiar." The woman nodded knowingly, like she'd heard that before. He wandered the room slowly, taking in each painting. Brushstrokes whispered secrets. Colors bled with emotion. One piece caught his eye, a woman walking barefoot on a beach at night, the moon high above her, her hair blowing in the wind. Her face wasn't clear, but Ethan didn't need clarity. He felt it in his chest. It was her. Layla. He moved closer, reading the title on the small plaque. Midnight by E.L. E.L. Elena Layla. His heart beat wildly. It wasn't just a painting. It was a message. A memory. That was the exact beach where he had proposed. The moon, the waves, even the stars, they were all just as they had been that night. Only someone who had stood there in that moment could have painted it. She had been here. Maybe she still was. He turned back to the woman behind the counter. "This piece, Midnight. When was it brought in?" The woman glanced at her ledger. "That one? About a month ago. The artist drops in and out. Quiet thing. Doesn't say much. Do you know her name?" "She signs everything Elle doesn't give real names. Just leaves the art and sometimes pays for space in cash." Finn nodded. "Has she been in recently?" The woman hesitated, narrowing her eyes slightly. "Maybe. Why are you looking for her?" He chose his words carefully. "She's someone I love. Someone who disappeared without saying goodbye." The woman studied his face. "And you're sure she wants to be found?" "I don't know," Ethan admitted. "But I promised her once. I'd never stop looking." Something softened in the woman's eyes. She looked toward the back hallway of the gallery. "There's a small studio we rent out to artists who want quiet. Sometimes she paints there. Might be something of hers left." Ethan followed her through the gallery and into a narrow hallway. The end was a door with peeling white paint. The woman unlocked it and stepped aside. "I can give you 10 minutes. But if she comes back, I didn't tell you anything." Then nodded gratefully. "Thank you." He stepped inside alone. The room was small, lit by a single window. Paint supplies cluttered a corner, brushes still wet in a jar of water. A canvas leaned against the wall, half finished. A woman in a red dress walking into the ocean, her face turned away. He recognized the dress. It was the one Layla had worn the night they first met. He picked up a sketchbook on the desk and flipped through it. Page after page of drawings, his face, his hands, their shadows on the beach. Notes in the margins, he dreams in color. Can he forgive me? If I vanish, will he still believe? His eyes stung. She had painted their love, preserved it, hidden it like treasure. She had never stopped thinking of him. Suddenly, he heard a sound, footsteps outside the studio window. He moved quickly to the window and peeked out through the curtain. A black SUV was parked across the street. Two men stood nearby, dressed in dark clothes, scanning the area. One of them was holding a phone. The other adjusted his jacket, revealing a small earpiece. They weren't tourists. Ethan's blood turned cold. They had found him. He backed away from the window and grabbed the sketchbook. As he slipped it into his coat, he noticed a small envelope taped beneath the desk. His name was on it again. Ethan. He opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a small handwritten note. You're too close now. You need to stop. You don't understand the reach he has. The man watching you in the shadows? He answers to someone worse. Someone I ran from in Madrid. I thought I could hide here. But the fog can only protect me for so long. If you found this, it means you still love me. But if you stay, they'll find you too. They already know your face. There's only one place left where I feel safe. Where it all began. You'll know where. But please, if you follow me, be ready to never go back. Al. Ethan pressed the note to his chest. One place left. Where it all began. Not the beach. Not the tree. Train station. The one where she had first bumped into him. Where she had dropped her book and smiled at him like the universe had pushed her into his arms. She had always said that was the only moment she didn't plan. The only thing that felt like fate. And now she was going back. He left the gallery through the back, moving fast and quiet, slipping between alleyways and old brick buildings. The SUV was still outside, but the men hadn't noticed him slip away. He ducked into a coffee shop, found the restroom, and changed his shirt. Then he walked out the front door like just another local, vanishing into the fog. His heart pounded. She was alive. She still loved him. But danger was closing in fast. He had to reach her before they did. Train station hadn't changed. Old bricks. Peeling paint. A broken clock above the entrance that always read 6:12. Ethan stood across the street, his heart hammering in his chest as he stared at the small cafe near Platform 3. The same cafe where he had first seen her. It had been a lifetime ago. But now, as the afternoon sun poured through the dusty glass, he saw her again. Layla. She was wearing a loose cardigan, her hair darker now, tied back in a messy bun. She moved differently, quiet, cautious, like every breath was a decision. She sat alone at a corner table with a half-finished cup of tea, sketching something in a notebook. He stepped forward slowly, his feet unsure but his heart certain. She looked up. Their eyes met, and for one perfect second time froze. Tears filled her eyes before she even moved. She stood, the notebook falling from her hands. Ethan walked faster, then faster, until they met in the middle of the quiet cafe. No words. Just a breathless, trembling embrace. Layla's hands clung to him like she didn't trust he was real. "Ethan," she whispered. No, how did you?" He pulled back just enough to look at her face. "I never stopped. You told me not to, and I couldn't." She shook her head, fear flashing in her eyes. "You don't understand. They'll be watching. You being here, it's not safe." "I know," he said softly. "But I couldn't let you carry this alone." Her eyes flickered with 1,000 emotions, love, guilt, panic. "You shouldn't have found me. But I did." They sat back down, hands still tangled together across the table. Layla glanced around nervously, scanning the cafe and the street beyond the window. "They've been closing in again," she said in a hushed voice. The men Damien sends, they're not just watching anymore. Someone was in my apartment 2 nights ago. I found the lock broken when I got home. Finn's jaw clenched. Then you can't stay hidden anymore. Come with me. We can go somewhere far. Start again. I wish it were that simple, she whispered, pain in her voice. But there's no far for people like him. He finds everyone. Ethan reached into his coat and pulled out the note she had left in the gallery. You said this was the only place you felt safe. Tears filled her eyes again. Because it was the only place I didn't plan. I didn't fake anything when I met you. That moment was real. He squeezed her hand. This is real too. Right now. She nodded, trembling. But I'm so scared. I wake up every night thinking this is the day he finds me. That this is the day I lose everything. You haven't lost me, Ethan said, voice fierce. You never did. A tear rolled down her cheek. She looked down, whispering, I still love you. His hand rose to her cheek, brushing it away. Then let me fight for you. With you. She leaned forward and kissed him, desperate, deep, full of every silent moment they'd missed. The world melted around them. For a heartbeat, they had everything. But then, bang! A gunshot shattered the glass of the cafe window. Screams erupted. Finn's body twisted, and then he collapsed. Blood. Layla screamed, catching him as he fell to the ground. People ducked, shouting, glass crunching underfoot. Finn's face was pale, his hand gripping her arm weakly. Ethan, she cried. No, 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 stay with me. I'm okay, he whispered through gritted teeth. It's just shoulder. She tore off her sweater and pressed it against the wound. He groaned but didn't pass out. Layla looked up through the shattered window. A man in black stood across the street, half hidden in the alley. Gun still in hand. Calm. Cold. Waiting. She saw his face. It wasn't Damien. But it was one of his. The man looked directly at her, nodded once, like it was a warning, and disappeared into the shadows. She turned back to Ethan, heart thundering. We have to move. Now. He nodded, wincing. Help me up. With her arm under his, she dragged him toward the back exit of the cafe. The world was spinning, but adrenaline kept them moving. She flagged down a passing taxi, forcing the driver to help her get Ethan into the back seat. Hospital? The man asked. Layla shook her head. No hospitals. Just drive. North. I'll tell you where. They sped away, leaving the blood and broken glass behind. In the back seat, Ethan's head rested against her shoulder. You saved me, he whispered. You took the bullet, she whispered back. I should have told you the truth earlier. I should have let you in. You did, he said faintly. Just not all at once. She pulled his hand to her lips and kissed it. I can't run anymore. Then don't. They arrived at an old safe house Layla had used years ago, an abandoned ranger's cabin tucked into the forest, hidden behind layers of winding dirt roads. She patched Ethan's wound as best she could using supplies she'd hidden in the wall. The bleeding slowed. He was safe for now. That night, the two of them sat beside a small fire, wrapped in blankets. Who was the shooter? Finn asked. One of Damien's messengers, Layla said. They don't kill unless they're ordered to. That bullet wasn't meant to end your life. Just send a message. Well, Ethan said with a faint smile, message received. Layla turned serious. But I'm not going to let them decide how this ends. She pulled out a burner phone and dialed a number Ethan hadn't seen before. What are you doing? He asked. She didn't answer until someone picked up. It's me, she said into the phone. He found me. And they shot at us. The voice on the other end responded in quiet, firm tones. Layla nodded. Then it's time. I'll meet you in 2 days. We end this. One way or another. She hung up. Ethan looked at her with wide eyes. What was that? She looked him in the eyes. An old friend. Someone who used to work for Damien. She turned against him. She's been waiting for me to decide if I want to fight back. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. And you do. Layla stared into the fire. For most of my life, I've been running. But loving you showed me something else. That maybe there's a future I can still fight for. She turned to him, eyes fierce. They came too close this time. You almost died. I can't live with that. So I'm going to end this. I'm going to stop him. Ethan smiled through the pain. Then I'll be right beside you. Layla shook her head. Not this time. Why not? Because if I fail, one of us has to survive this. But one of us has to tell the story. Ethan reached for her hand and pulled it against his heart. Then don't fail. She didn't answer. But her eyes, burning with love, sorrow, and fire, promised she would try. The hospital room was quiet, filled only with the soft rhythm of beeping monitors and the scent of flowers by the windowsill. Morning sunlight streamed in, casting golden lines across the bed where Ethan lay, eyes closed, chest rising gently beneath the crisp white sheets. Layla sat by his side, her fingers wrapped around his, unwilling to let go. It had been 3 days since the cabin. 3 days since Ethan had taken a bullet for her, since they escaped the hitman's warning and disappeared into the forest. She had driven through the night, found a private clinic far enough from Damien's reach, and begged the doctor to keep Ethan safe and silent. He survived the surgery. But he hadn't opened his eyes until now. Layla leaned forward the moment she felt his fingers twitch. Ethan. His eyelids fluttered. Then he turned his head slowly, blinking up at her. You stayed, he murmured, his voice hoarse. She nodded, tears instantly escaping down her cheeks. I'm never leaving again. He gave her a weak, lopsided smile. Good. I was worried I'd imagined you. Would have been a beautiful dream, though. She pressed a kiss to his knuckles, trembling. No more dreams. Just us. Real, painful, beautiful us. He tried to sit up, wincing. What happened? Did he find us again? No, she whispered. We left before he could. Ethan nodded slowly. And you called her, didn't you? The woman who used to work for him. Yes, she said, her eyes growing colder. And we're going to finish this. 2 weeks later. Layla walked into a federal building with her head high and her heart steady. Beside her, Ethan, still recovering but strong enough to stand, held a worn leather folder in his hand. The folder contained everything. Photos of the gunmen. Sketches of the hideouts Layla had remembered. Bank slips Ethan had traced from Marrow Bay. And voice memos. Her ex, Damien Moreau, had grown overconfident. She had once recorded him during a fight in Madrid, hidden her phone in the lining of her coat. His voice was on it, laughing, threatening, naming associates, bragging about how no one could touch him. But now someone could. Them. When Layla played the audio for the agents, there was silence. Then movement. Phones picked up. Doors opened. Officers began speaking in urgent, focused tones. The hunt had begun. Within 72 hours, Damien was arrested crossing the border with false papers and a fake passport. His men scattered like rats. A dozen names fell with him: traffickers, corrupt officials, arms dealers. Layla stood in the courtroom 2 months later and looked him in the eye. Damien stared back, no longer the powerful man who once controlled her life, but a shell. Caged predator. You ruined me, he snarled from the defendant's table. She smiled gently, calmly. No. You ruined yourself. I just survived you. 3 months later. The beach looked the same. Silver waves kissed the shore. Seagulls cried overhead. The ocean breathed against the sand like a living thing, eternal, quiet, beautiful. Ethan stood barefoot, His jeans rolled up, salt water swirling around his ankles. His shoulder had healed, though a faint scar remained. One Layla kissed sometimes when the room was quiet, as if trying to erase the pain. She approached him slowly, her dress fluttering in the soft wind, her long hair free and flowing. No makeup. No lies. No fear. Just her. The woman who had survived the shadows. The woman he still couldn't believe was his. Ethan turned as he felt her presence. "You came." "Of course I came," she said, smiling. "I have a question to ask you." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh." She pulled something from her pocket. A simple silver ring. "Ethan Carter," she said, her voice shaking a little. "You once proposed to me under this sky, and I left you in the dark. I thought I was saving you. I thought I didn't deserve you. But I was wrong." He stared at her, stunned. "I don't want to run anymore," she continued. "I want to fight. I want to build something out of the ashes. I want mornings that smell like coffee and you. I want nights where we argue over who hogs the blanket. I want a love that chooses to stay." She knelt on one knee. His heart stopped. "So, Ethan Carter, will you marry me?" He dropped to his knees in front of her, unable to hold back the tears. He took the ring from her hand and slipped it on himself. "Yes," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. 1,000 times yes. They kissed as the sun peeked over the horizon, painting the sea in shades of rose and gold. The sky glowed with the promise of a new day, a clean slate. Kiss deepened, slow and full of meaning. His hands cradled her waist, pulling her against him like he could never let her go again. Her fingers tangled in his hair, her lips soft and sure, no longer trembling with fear or guilt. This kiss wasn't just passion. It was home. It was forgiveness and fire, wrapped in the salt air and morning light. When they finally pulled apart, she whispered, "It hurts sometimes to look back, but I'd walk through all of it again just to find you." Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Love like this is worth every scar." She smiled. "Even the one I gave you?" "Especially that one." They laughed, barefoot in the sand, the tide reaching toward their feet like the world was celebrating with them. Behind them, their footprints marked the beginning of a new journey. Not one of escape, but of becoming. Together. Weeks later, in a cozy seaside cottage tucked behind dunes and wildflowers, Layla painted again, this time without fear. Sunlight streamed through tall windows. The walls were filled with color, moments of their story captured in brush and oil. One painting showed the hospital room, Ethan asleep, her hand on his heart. Another showed a blurred train station, her silhouette running, his waiting. But her favorite was the last, 2 figures on the beach at sunrise, locked in an eternal kiss, the ring glinting in the light. Ethan walked in, holding 2 mugs of coffee. He paused to look at the painting. "It's beautiful," he said, sliding an arm around her waist. "No," Layla said, turning in his arms and resting her head against his chest. "It's real." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "So what's next, future Mrs. Carter?" She smiled. "A wedding. Maybe a dog. A garden. Peace." "You think we've earned that?" he asked. She nodded, eyes shining. "I think we bled for it. We bled for love. For freedom. For each other." He pulled her tighter. "Then let's never waste it." Outside, the ocean roared like applause. The sun hung high, watching over them as if to say, "This is how love wins. Not easily. Not quickly. Not without pain. But truly. Completely. Forever."